Hi guys. Yeah, so my name is Stefan, and I'm first of all kind of wanted to say just thank you for being invited. I come into this group from a very kind of different vantage point from a lot of you guys. So I'm the CTO and co-founder of a kind of Scandinavian now also with a base in San Francisco company doing a video platform. So if you don't know us, we're kind of European. We serve around 350 customers around the world, but if you don't know us, you certainly know kind of a lot of our competitors. You know, certainly kind of Brightco, Yala, Kaltura, and maybe a few others. So that's kind of the vantage point that I'm coming into this kind of conversation from. I've been following some of this work on the sideline because it obviously affects us to some extent, because we do have customers in this room, but it's also something that spans a bit of a field that we have a tough time kind of moving within, and I'll talk to that in the next kind of 10 or 15 minutes. Just to give you a sense of who we are, we serve around 1 million videos, 350 customers with 40 people spanning Copenhagen and San Francisco. Serve mainly kind of corporate customers, everything from startups like Zendesk and Spotify over to big kind of global brands like Carlsberg, Lego, Cilio, and a lot of kind of content marketing companies, and to some extent media companies as well. And we're working, this obviously makes a lot of sense in this context, with the DPA in not necessarily hosting their asset archives, but helping them on some of the publishing stuff that they're doing on the other side of kind of the gateway. So from where I'm standing, we're basically in many cases brought in not as asset management or metadata management, but as a way to publish video and metadata and establish a lot of not necessarily just video delivery, but also context around video, whether that's then control and permissions, design and branding, players and interactivity, but also just serving up metadata and making that available for search and for users and for general consumption afterwards. I'll excuse that I'm doing this. It might be basically just so you have a sense of why I'll be saying what I'm saying and some of the caveats to kind of my interest and kind of take on this field. And I'll promise to not make this the sales pitch. I'm the technical guy who sits in front of the computer and kind of program the platform most days, so I don't necessarily do the sales pitch. But I think it's viable to do the kind of the 2 minute primer just so you know kind of how we're entering the space. So we're basically kind of this complete video platform for publishing both live content and on-demand video. We do kind of video management to some extent in 3 different pieces. So kind of one platform for our customers to run both their live stuff on and their on-demand video on. Obviously kind of managing what content is published, what isn't published. Obviously managing the distribution of that across web pages, across social media, and also doing kind of dedicated video hubs or video landing pages, and bringing a lot of kind of tools for content marketing and marketing around the stuff with APIs, advanced video analytics, individual viewer tracking, and kind of integration against marketing tools, whether that's then social media, but also other stuff. So it's again something that informs the background of what we're doing. Different ways of looking at how that's working. We help people build these kind of inbound video pages. We make them designable and brandable from players up to pages. We obviously do embeds. We do clear call to actions in videos, kind of interactivity on top of video. So video is not necessarily it's certainly the starting point for our customers, but in most cases it serves as kind of a flat file that is then augmented with different kind of context afterwards. People tracking, sign-ups and newsletters and kind of stuff, permission management in players, connecting to other marketing tools, and finally also live management. So kind of a very wide product that has some influence on metadata, but not necessarily that much, right? But the main point being that we come to the question of metadata from this kind of different angle, that we're not about asset management, we're basically kind of what happens after the assets has been managed to some extent. So we do kind of publishing, distribution, and analytics tracking. So the main challenge that we're finding, and that's also why I think it's excellent that you brought this point up just now. We're actually not necessarily, the main challenge I think for us is not necessarily about storing metadata. That's kind of something that there are ways to manage, but obviously having a clear sense of standardization is very helpful. The next kind of challenge becomes different kinds of exchanging metadata, and I'll come up with some examples and different points of why that's a huge challenge to both our customers and to how we work with product development and bringing up the platform. So it means that I'm coming from a different background, but also that I share a lot of the pains of missing standards around video, because we end up doing a lot of the same things over and over again in terms of how data is being exchanged, and also find that in many cases how our product is being implemented in organizations when there's a high degree of metadata exchange. We serve what I would call the lowest common denominator. In many cases we end up with this kind of workflow that is driven around FTP, which by now is like a 40-year-old standard, if not more, and some XML file exchanges, which can work, but it's also very vulnerable to a lot of different things. And it also means that standardization in this field is very kind of needed. So common workflows in the platform, obviously the most common workflow is that people have a file, usually an MP4 file, but that varies obviously, that they'll either go to a browser and upload. They might do it from their mobile phones. They might have end users or partners upload through a form, but that's kind of a variation of the same thing. After that is done, they'll manage metadata on top of the video, so we'll give them forms to enter titles and descriptions and creation dates and years and a lot of the extra metadata that is being added on top. And then we have more and more of our customers doing kind of workflows that automate publishing either through our APIs or through integration of FTP. So in both of these cases, we kind of specify ways of obviously uploading video files, but also of sending off metadata in kind of standard ways, but not really necessarily standard ways. So again, this is something where the IPTC work is very helpful. Other workflows involve basically exporting and importing videos to the platform. So a core feature of the platform is that we basically allow you kind of to have videos in one place. We will publish them on your own platforms to some extent, but also shoot them off to different places. Most notably to Facebook, YouTube, Vimeo, and Twitter. But we have cases where people are doing exports through media RSS, through even email, and also through FTP delivery. So in these cases, the metadata fields the common ones are videos, titles, descriptions, tags, but certainly also subtitles and thumbnails. And this points to maybe one of the bigger concerns that we end up for all of these implementations to have some standards to lean on, but they're specified by the vendors, right? So it means that we're implementing a Facebook API, a Vimeo API, YouTube API, and a Twitter API. We're leaning on a very underspecified media RSS standard. We're delivering stuff in emails where people are building their own emails, and FTP delivery is something where people are basically building XML files within our product to serve whatever other platform is being delivered to. So that's a very common workflow for at least a lot of our customers that are in this specific space. On the other side, we also do import from other sources. So again, media RSS is something here. Media RSS really doesn't cover a lot of the ground, but in cases where we're importing, we're simply importing videos, like raw video files, but also titles, description, tags, along with subtitles, and certainly also a thumbnail. The interesting things in these cases become that there's a lot of kind of post-hoc metadata from all of these platforms that become relevant by the time that we're importing. So when we're importing a file, actually the main metadata might be a title and description, but usually why people are importing to our platform is actually about usage data and analytics data. So it actually is kind of daily analytics data that we're then consuming other people's APIs to do, in something where, again, kind of consolidating a lot of this standard metadata is something that obviously adds a huge implementation burden on us. But I would guess that looking around the room, you can probably find 50 implementation burdens of equal size. So the interesting thing for me around a lot of these integrations is, yeah, we won't get Facebook to lean on a common standard. They'll specify the APIs. But in the kind of second tier and third tier, in terms of all the platform vendors that you guys are using primarily, not necessarily just for posting to social media, for us and for basically kind of everyone that isn't Facebook and Google, there is this kind of opportunity to start specifying ways of exchanging files with the relevant metadata in a way that that makes sense in not necessarily the asset management context, but also in the publishing, distribution, and maybe even the tracking context. So I mean that's kind of the common workflow, and that's kind of going back to one of my initial slides. Our kind of core problem in terms of implementations is not necessarily what we do with the first version of a metadata, a piece of metadata, but how we keep that metadata in sync and distributed well across time. And I'll share some of the problems of why it's very hard for us to apply standards in those cases that might inform some of your own thinking about this as well. So we are relying somewhat on standards. So if there are titles, descriptions, tags, and a few other things embedded in files as they're being uploaded, we will use those. We have standards that allow you to upload XML files and thumbnails files along with video files on FTP that we can kind of rely on. But apart from that, there are a number of challenges to doing metadata exchanges well in the context and the workflows that I just showed you guys. First of all, we actually don't necessarily know the metadata by the time that we are asking users to modify the metadata. So that's a kind of core problem of the platform, right? In the sense that we ask people to upload a very large file, and we spend the time while they're uploading that file asking them to fill in titles, description, and a lot of other stuff. We don't necessarily know the metadata before the metadata has been loaded, which means that we need to wait for the file to be loaded. That comes back later in this kind of bullet point list, in the sense that to the extent that the metadata is embedded in video files, replacing metadata becomes really, really hard, which is also something that was mentioned before in terms of having sidecar files. So next problem becomes, what is the canonical version? So people will edit a title, they might even do multiple different titles for A/B testing on our platform, and we won't necessarily fuse that into the originals, because we kind of want to store the originals because they are the original upload files. How does that then relate to edited versions? You have one, 20-minute clip that is then edited down to a 10-minute clip. What happens with renditions in different qualities and even with multi-bit rate chunks, and how do you store this metadata consistently across? Obviously, one possible solution is to fuse in an external URL reference in the video files and then reference the metadata explicitly outside of that. In terms of fusing data into files, it's not something that we're facing a lot, but in terms of how most cloud solutions are rolled out, there's actually a pretty big problem of modifying files in place in object file storage. So it becomes really cumbersome at scale once you get to the other side of 1 million files. Actually, we have 1 million videos with then certainly kind of 10 versions of that. How we kind of bring those down to our servers to be able to update just a single field in a very large file is actually pretty cumbersome, because we need to kind of grab that entire file, download it, modify it, upload it again. So it's something that we don't do simply because it doesn't add the necessary value to kind of store those canonical versions. And finally then, how do we manage metadata and updates without re-uploading full files? Because what we're seeing is that yes, there are standards for having kind of sidecar files or metadata stored outside of the file, but they are simply not used. The very common case that we're finding is that there might be a few pieces of metadata that are in the files themselves, and past that, kind of managing metadata, updating metadata would involve uploading or re-uploading full files. And then obviously for our case, which is not necessarily the asset management case, we also need a broader view to be taken on metadata, in the sense that interactive content, publishing permissions, even permissions for different kinds of metadata and then daily analytics and daily usage to not necessarily be considered first-party metadata, but certainly something that is part of the package that is important for how our customers are consuming our data. So that kind of informs if we were looking at the long list of recommended metadata properties, like these would probably be the list of kind of extra properties that we would be missing in order to have full coverage for how we allow our customers or how our customers are using our platform to manage metadata. Obviously, analytics data is one. Sections and chapters with then the same set of properties, essentially, titles, descriptions, all that kind of stuff to be applicable for sections. One very common case is having different thumbnails for different sections and chapters. Then there's a whole kind of box that shouldn't probably be open too much in terms of the specification. Something that's more and more common is kind of rich call to actions and overlays. That's mainly about having hotspots and zones within the video that are tied to specific timeframes. Then support for 360 video is certainly something that is coming out kind of slowly and securely. We just launched it on the platform and are seeing a lot of interest, and it also means that we're getting a lot of weird, again, underspecified 360 videos coming into the platform in a way where standardization would be nice. Relations to other videos, I have one original video that is then clipped into 3 other videos. It might be a live stream with 6 different speakers being cut into different things. What are the relations between those different videos with the IDs? And then, as I mentioned before, permissions for different classes of data. Title and description would always follow the file, for example. Analytics data might not necessarily be something that I would want to make public in an external context. So that all kind of comes down to some of the thinking that we have around metadata, some of the pragmatical choices that we've faced along the way, and then the kind of the wish list of what were we supposed to talk about for a few minutes here. Kind of had this idea of like what would the wish list be, and like you guys mentioned APIs before, and I wouldn't necessarily call it APIs, but I would call it standardized ways of having arrays of metadata for videos or feeds. So in the current version, kind of our current high volume users, the people that are uploading tens or hundreds of thousands of videos in the span of a week, they will usually do a custom API implementation, which means that they have a very tough time onboarding to the platform. They are doing maybe FTP with custom XML, again something that's sort of kind of fragile, that has a lot of potential downsides, and then finally a few cases where media RSS is being used, and as I said before, media RSS is certainly not designed for this use case. It's kind of a poor man's something that sort of whatever needs there are for publishing, right? But they are not good for consistently storing and updating metadata. And again, this mirrors a lot of the same things that I mentioned before, kind of the workflow burden that we have in terms of integrating with a lot of different parties for importing and for exporting. We essentially, for all of the distant distribution points, whether they're importing or exporting based, we're ending up doing custom API implementations for all of those with a significant API cost associated with it, and frankly also implementations that we're choosing not to do, so it also is an impediment to our business. So just a very kind of high level, what was such a lovely standard of things to be doing? First of all, it would be switching the burden of distribution from pull to push, or from push to pull. Essentially, the main problem right now is that people would be updating and would be uploading to, like they already have a file on disk for somewhere. It is already on a server or computer that is internet connected. So we have a way of pulling that content. That could be a URL for a feed, whatever. But in all of these cases, which is also kind of how we're implementing ourselves, right? We are uploading a file right now to a server somewhere through an API, and that is fault. That is fault prone in the sense that it's like it is hard to resume these things, as opposed to the web having been built for resuming large file downloads. So switching the onus from being a push-based standard to being a pull-based standard would be a huge improvement, which is what Media Access does, and also why Media Access is somewhat popular. It will allow for different classes of metadata to be exchanged, and again, you guys have a fairly long list of them, kind of the administrative part, the technical part, the descriptive part, the rights. I would probably argue that some of the analytics part here would make sense. It would probably also allow for implementers to extend or to specify extra classes of properties per service. So if we're doing different kinds of call to actions or overlays, obviously there would be an interest in how that is at least publishable through this standard. It would probably specify ways for consumers to tell beta data has been changed. For example, having kind of hashes of content that would allow us to basically be pulling a list of what are the assets that have been updated within the last few hours, and then detecting without actually comparing data on the service whether content has been changed. And it would specify a way of kind of having callback URLs for metadata changes. So say that we're listening, somebody would say, I want to be importing stuff to TwentyThree from its feed. It is possibly JSON, XML, doesn't really matter. We update from, we import content from that, including from kind of titles descriptions, and we allow people to change titles descriptions and a lot of metadata on the platform. Might be that the original source wants to note that changes have been made, and that can be very easily implemented in a way where we basically kind of just be calling back to a URL that would then be signed in a nice way. Like a callback URL and HTTPS would in most cases allow for a very kind of detached way of exchanging metadata. So I think that's kind of my 2 cents for a lot of this, and I think obviously a lot of actually the very kind of interesting discussion before in terms of what do you standardize, how do you standardize, how do you map that, serves as a very nice underpinning for solving some of the specific problems that we're facing. Right? It's about standardization in a way where metadata can be pushed to the right places at the right times, and certainly this kind of extension to it would be something that would solve all of our problems at one firm go. So that would be nice. So that's the one item wish list, and kind of a bit of a look into how our customers are working with videos being exchanged, metadata being exchanged across platforms. Thanks, guys.